Good evening, everyone. I'm Southampton Town Supervisor Jay Schneiderman. I want to thank you all for coming and being part of the solution to a vexing problem that we find our community in the grips of, and that is the opioid epidemic. It's interesting watching that, as I had taken my daughter, who is a graduate of this school, a few years ago for her wisdom teeth, and it's exactly, the dentist prescribed Oxycontin for that. And I said, no, I don't think so. She can do what I did when I was younger, which was with the Tylenol, and it worked out fine. But that's certainly part of the problem. And coming to a solution to this problem isn't easy, and we know that part of it is through coming together as a community. And this is really, last year, 19 members of our community had their lives extinguished, most of them at really young ages, all because of this opioid crisis, which we're beginning to understand more as an illness, a disease, that people need help. And we are trying to stop people from starting. We're trying to bring resources to people who have already started. We're trying to cut off the supply. We're trying to work with long-term recovery. And it was really after one particular death in the community where it was the granddaughter of Drew Scott, who I knew for many years because of his career at News 12, who had interviewed me many times, and I was shocked to hear the story of this beautiful young woman from Sag Harbor who lost her life to heroin. And I said, Drew, let's work together. Can we come together and try to stop further deaths? And he said yes, he wanted to dedicate himself, and we decided to work with the Southampton Town Board and put together a task force. And a number of my colleagues on the town board are here tonight. Julie Lofstad is in front, John Bouvier, Councilman Bouvier, Councilman Scavone is here. I think Councilman Scalera was not able to make it. Lots of other public officials. Bridget Fleming, I see, is here. We have representatives from Senator Lavalle's office. Jeff Keto is here. I believe there's a representative from Congressman Zeldin's office. Belinda is here. Thank you for coming. So we're getting a lot of support from other elected officials as well. I want to thank the Southampton School District, Nick Dino, Superintendent, who is here. He's part of our task force, and Principal Brian Zahn, I saw earlier. Thank you for making this great, Brian, making this great room available to us. So, our job is pretty simple, is to stop additional deaths. That's what we're trying to do. These are preventable deaths, and I know that we can do this if we work together. And this task force has brought people from education, people from law enforcement, recovering addicts, medical professionals, social workers, all kind of coming together. We've actually divided this now 44-member task force into 4 different subcommittees, one on law enforcement, one on prevention, one on treatment, and one on recovery. And it's really active, and we're trying to put recommendations together sometime in June, things that can be done at the local level, the state level, and the national level. So at this point, I'd like to welcome the co-chair of the Opioid Task Force. You may know him from all those years at News 12. Drew Scott.
Thank you, Jay. I'm privileged to be here, and I thank you for putting this task force together. It's a privilege to serve on this task force. I lost my beautiful 22-year-old granddaughter, Hallie Ray, to heroin mixed with fentanyl. She injected it into her veins, and she lost her life back on September the 7th of last year. She couldn't be revived, and she went unidentified for about 18 hours. So it was a terrible thing for us, a real trauma to the community, a trauma to our family. And I knew that we needed to take action to do something, and that's why I joined this task force. Now, if you've been watching Mark Zuckerberg on Facebook on the hearings in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, you may have noticed some of the senators and congressmen asked him about why Facebook would allow ads where people could buy fentanyl or OxyContin on Facebook. And he didn't know about that and was surprised at that. But that was happening, and it's happening to this day on other websites. So it's readily available, and we want to stop that. We also want to end the stigma of opioid addiction in Southampton town. So we have a number of families who are here tonight who have lost loved ones, and I welcome you. We also welcome people who are watching us live on Facebook Live, and a number of people will be watching this as well on CTV Channel 22 Southampton. Here's a statistic you may not have heard yet. 142 Americans die each day from a drug overdose like fentanyl or opioids, and that's a sad thing. We want to stop that. We want to reverse that trend, and that's why we're here. I'll turn this back over to Jay, and we'll continue the program.
It's great to have Drew as part of this task force. And all the folks you see at this front table, they're all members of that task force. And they've been dedicating their time to try to come up with some solutions. So, Drew, I had mentioned we had 19 deaths last year. The year before, I believe it was 5. So it more than tripled. And I think the year before that, around 2. So you can see it's increasing fairly rapidly, or at least it has been. Partly because of fentanyl, right? So fentanyl is one of the things that are adding to the problem because it's so lethal and it's being mixed in with heroin, and also now it can be mixed in with cocaine and other substances. On the other side, the flip side, Narcan, and you'll hear more about Narcan tonight, is helping save lives, and that's reducing some of the deaths, but those numbers are pretty alarming. So drug overdoses are pretty you hear a lot about gun violence, particularly, Parkland and all these horrible incidents. But drug overdoses are actually killing more Americans than all the gun violence, all the shootings, and car accidents. And we're always worried about our kids getting in the car, and it's dangerous. More drug overdoses than car accidents. This is from the Center for Disease Control. So it is a serious problem. You see some of the headlines, a lot of these local headlines of, Suffolk County lost over 400 individuals last year to overdoses. And, the headlines tell some of the story about how the community has come together to try to win this war on opioids. We started out initially as a 27-member task force, and just from some of these stories, people kept coming forward and saying, hey, I feel like I can contribute too. I have a special skill. And so, one individual who just was very active in her community felt that she could help with outreach, other medical professionals, lots of help from Stony Brook University, Hospital, Southampton Stony Brook, Southampton Hospital, Northwell Hospital recently joined in, Alternatives, Family Service League, all the different school superintendents are participating. So we went from 27 members to 44 members on this task force. So Drew, I'm going to hand it back to you and talk about some of the work that the task force has been doing.
Well, we've been very busy addressing this problem. Here's what we've been doing in the last couple of months. We've held 2 youth forums. We've had 1 medical forum here at Stony Brook Southampton Hospital that was very interesting, with doctors and nurses, medical practitioners here in Southampton town. We created a help leaflet and posters that are up around town and on CTV to direct people to the services. We have a hotline that is ready to take calls from people who have families in trouble. Many of the resource groups are represented tonight with tables out in our lobby there. You probably passed by them as you came in tonight, and they will remain there after the event for you to visit. We also have the Suffolk County Health Department, who will also show you, if you wish, how to administer Narcan, and they will be providing kits, if you wish, if you're willing to see some of the training that they're going to provide tonight. So stop by their table as well. And the focus for this public forum is on the family. And because, like me, this crisis affects whole families. And I'm happy to say that on the task force is Hallie Ray's mother, Sally, and Hallie Ray's cousin, Mackenzie. And they're very happy to serve, and they can help enlighten us how this affects families. Jay?
All right, so we're going to have a few introductory speakers. Mostly today, this evening, is about hearing from you, from the community, and that's why the task force is here. We want to hear what you have to say, and anything you say is okay. This is a judgment-free zone. There's no bad questions, no bad comments. When we get to the public portion, any of the task force members, you can direct it to any individual or who's ever best suited to answer a question. We'll answer that question. But we do want to offer some very brief presentations, and we're fortunate to have some great individuals who are joining us. And then when that's over, then we'll go right to the audience, and we'll give you plenty of time to share your comments. So the town was really fortunate in being able to recruit an extraordinary police chief in Chief Strzenicki. Steve came on about, more than a year ago now, right? Just coming up on a year. Steve was the chief of Nassau County PD, which is obviously a much larger police department than Suffolk County PD, and has been involved really in every element in policing. And law enforcement has a big role to play in this opioid crisis, not just in interrupting the supply, but really with working, that 911 call when somebody's overdosing, they're likely to be on the scene and administering Narcan. And they've been really working with the community and trying to reduce opioid deaths. And we're really happy to have Chief Strzenicki with us in Southampton, and I'm pleased to introduce him to you tonight at the forum. Steve Strzenicki, Chief of Southampton Town Police Department.
Thank you, Supervisor. I just have a very brief presentation to make, but I want to start with some encouraging news. And if you look at the slide in front of you, it's not indicated there, but in 2015 we had this shows the first quarter of a year. We had no deaths at all in 2015, and then it went up to 2 in 16 and spiked up to 7 last year. The encouraging news is only 1 so far this year. 1 is too many, obviously, but I think that the task force and all the combined efforts are showing some positive results. And this is really a concerted group effort that I think is making a difference. I just want to touch on a couple of the law enforcement initiatives that are in place. Again, law enforcement, as the supervisor mentioned, is only one component, but there's some interesting things happening within our area that I want to bring to your attention. The first one is investigative component that we have put into all calls for overdoses. As the supervisor mentioned, we are frequently on scene when somebody overdoses. In many cases, we're able to rescue that individual, the use of Narcan. In some cases, unfortunately, we're not so lucky or fortunate, and the person doesn't make it. But what we recognized when I was back in Nassau, and certainly see it now, is that at that moment in time, we as a police department, we as law enforcement have an opportunity to get intelligence, information that might not come to us in any other moment. At that point, when somebody is either near death or has died, we get cooperation from family members. We get cooperation from friends and neighbors. So when I came into this position just about a year ago, was one of the first things that I changed was instead of just having a police officer in uniform respond to an overdose, I wanted a detective to go there so the detective could try to glean some of that information, build an intelligence package, and better understand the flow of the drugs in our community. And it has been paying big dividends. We have a much, much better understanding right now of how how trafficking is happening locally, and it has given us a leg up in that fight against the opioid epidemic. And as I've said at the last meeting, we look at people who are using opioids very differently than we look at people who are selling them. We recognize that users have an addiction, they have a serious medical problem, they're not necessarily criminals, but we take a very hard approach to those people who are poisoning our youth and poisoning and killing people in our community. Right in line with that is the second bullet. If you're an officer and you're at the scene, and we see this now with Narcan, we're repetitively going back to the same location and frequently to the same person and reviving them with Narcan. It's a very strong addiction. People don't break out very easily. So they overdose today, they may overdose tomorrow, and the next day. Just in this quarter alone, we had one individual who was Narcan rescued 4 times. As a police chief, I look at that moment, again, looking for opportunities, and said, this is a moment where maybe we could help this person. It's not enough for us to just keep saving people. We want to get some help for that person. So within the group that you see in front of you, we've had a lot of discussion. We've had people who are addicted themselves who have said to me that sometimes it's more powerful when a treatment center reaches out rather than waiting for somebody who may just be on the edge but not committed to reaching out themselves. So quite a while ago, I started thinking about how can we bridge this? How can we bridge from the first responder to getting that person who we rescue some treatment? So we did some work with our legal bureau here in the town, and we came up with a consent form that we offer to an individual when we revive them with Narcan. And we asked them if they would grant us permission to share their information with the treatment subcommittee. And we have had cases where individuals at that moment, and maybe they wouldn't have done it 2 days or a day earlier, but at that moment they say, you know what, I need help. I recognize I need help. I'll tell you who I am. They sign a consent form. We turn it over to the treatment center subcommittee, and there are many treatment agencies represented in the task force, and they take it upon themselves to come up with a plan to reach out and offer that person some help. So this is a very new step we're taking. I'm encouraged by it. I think it's going to show, again, I think it's going to prove to be productive and show some good dividends. Just on the next bullet, if you can bring that up. We are engaging in a awareness and Narcan training programs. One is going to happen tonight, but we have also gone out into the community. In January, we were in Hampton Bays at the Senior Center. In just this last month in March, we were at Flanders at the Community Center, and we're looking to schedule another one. Lieutenant Ralph, who is our community outreach person for the department, has a team of officers. We go out in the field. We talk about awareness. You're going to hear from Pam Stark, who worked with me in Nassau County. She has some great information on awareness and programs that can help with schools. We've been in the schools. So we're trying to just bring and raise the level of awareness and talk about programs that can be put into place in town, and that's also effective. The next bullet is our drug take-back program, which is coming up very, very shortly. Please make note of this. On the 28th of this month, we'll be at 3 locations. We'll be at the Flanders Community Center, the Hampton Bays Senior Center, and our police substation in the Bridgehampton Commons. And the last thing I want to talk about, if it comes up, is our Explorers. We have 30 young people in our Explorer group right now, and it is growing and growing and growing all the time. I'm very encouraged about that. The Explorer program is a great opportunity for the youth in the community to develop leadership skills and to explore themselves and navigate through their young adult lives and try to stay on the right course, try to stay away from what we're here talking about tonight. So recently, we asked our Explorers how they felt about this whole situation, about opioid use, about drug use. We also asked them about gang use and how they felt about that. And I was very, very pleased to hear that they made a very firm commitment that they do not want to involve themselves with drugs. They do not want to involve themselves with other bad things. And I'd like to introduce some of our explorers right now. If you guys would come and take the stage right in front of me. We're very proud of these young men and women. And they have a message for you tonight, and I'm going to let them deliver the message right now.
What is our message? No drugs.
What is your second message, explorers?
Explorers, what is our other message? No gangs.
Let's hear it for these young men and women. That is what we want to see in this town, and we're very proud. You're going to see our explorers at our take-back locations. You're going to see them in schools. We're going to use them to promote our message. We think it's a really good thing for youth to be talking with youth, and particularly youth who, like these young men and women, are on the right track. So once again, let's have a round of applause for our fine new explorers. Thank you. And thank you all. I'm just have the honor of introducing our next guest, who I already alluded to. I worked with Pam in Nassau County Police Department for decades, and when I was serving as the chief, this entire issue started to come to light probably about 12 or 13 years ago, and started to really rear its head in the Massapequa area. You probably read about a lot of things that happened there. And as the chief, I was looking for a spokesperson in our department to get out into the community, to study the issues, and to raise the awareness in the entire county of Nassau, which is no small undertaking. So Pam had a instinctive feeling for this issue. She kind of came to my attention and expressed an interest in serving in that role, and she embraced this like I've seen no other person embrace this issue. She has studied it, she knows it from top to bottom, she's explored every angle of it, and she, in my opinion, is one of the best spokespeople on the planet, certainly in our area, to talk to you about the issue and about some of the programs that she explored and brought to Nassau County for us, and she's willing to bring here to Southampton. So please join me in welcoming Pam Stark.
I got my clicker. Hi, I'm Pam Stark, and thank you very much, Chief. When I was asked in 2009, 2008, the chief had come to me. He was chief of detectives at the time, and being a detective in Nassau, he had brought up that we were going to go forward with a comprehensive approach. And he was talking about prevention and education, and it just rang a bell in my head, you know, when you just get that passion and you just want to start talking about it. And I remember speaking to my mom on the phone, and I said, Mom, I said, you know, they're talking about this new position. And she said, oh, Pam, she said, that's fabulous. You know, you could start bringing all the gifts that you learned from being a family of addiction, you know, to the front. And I said, Mom, yours was alcohol. And she said, didn't you ever listen, Pam? She said, if somebody offered me heroin, I would have used it. And that was an 86-year-old woman who told me at the time. My mom passed away March 15th, 2015, and she was 1 week shy of 91 years old. But she had just celebrated 40 years of sobriety. So I have to say to you, I didn't know that there were that many people that didn't have that gift in their life, that didn't have, I don't want to say addiction was a gift, but it taught me so much, right? And recovery was something that was just the most incredible thing that was offered to me. So that was something that I brought to the table, and I really wanted to speak to young people. Like, that is my main concern. So the chief had asked me, and he said education, prevention, of course, a partnership. And when we partnered and we educated, we used this curriculum. It's a kindergarten through 12th grade curriculum, and it actually builds on itself. It's 1 hour a week, and it is it's 1 hour a week, and it's for a 10-week session. In the beginning, you'll use puppets, robots, but when you hit middle school or high school, it's role play. And so what is this curriculum called Too Good for Drugs? Well, first off, it's a lot broader than its title. It's been in the schools since 1978, so it's coming on 40 years. So it's evidence-based. Today it's in over 3,000 school districts, and it's over 50 states. And as I said, it builds on each other, or you can use it on its own. So I had the pleasure of working with some students with this, but I also was able to certify all 56 school districts in Nassau County and more than 480 administrators in the schools. So I know firsthand how much they embrace it, how it empowered them, and how the dialogue continued to go from one grade to the next. But if you notice what it's offering, what are we lacking in our society, right? Coping skills. Coping skills, it really does. It emphasizes on that. And goals, obtainable goals, right? How about problem solving? It's so different today, right? I have two sons, 27 and 29, and I just see it so different. Like even my son was just sending me pictures of he painted his house and like, how do you tape it? I said, oh my gosh, like things that I probably would have done, but it's a different society, right? We're more of a techno society. So how does Too Good for Drugs, again, the title is not what I would call it. I would call it health and wellness. Is 95 to 98% role play, and that is something that we need in our society. We need to know how to articulate. We need to know how to talk. I need to be able to go up to the chief of department and say, Chief, I would really like to apply for that job, and know how to do that. And you know what? You need to be able to listen. You need to be able to be a really great listener and understand that other people have needs too, right? And so this curriculum can work on bullying, it can work on eating disorders, it can work in gang situations. It teaches all the great skills that people need. So health and wellness is what I would call it. I don't know why, but it's not going. Oh, and so I used 6 young adults that I had met through the Too Good for Drugs program. They were in the alternative program, and they sat on a steering committee with me, and they basically wrote, we had a lot of community members as well, wrote this, the dialogue for a video that we service for middle school, right? So that was our target, and I asked them, how could you have not gone up those stairs, right? How could we have kept you to keep going down that hallway and not made that first step up? And they said, well, listen, we never thought we would be addicted. We just never wanted to have anything like that. We wanted to be in control, and we thought we were invincible. But we did get hurt, even no matter what was going on in our lives when we saw our loved ones hurt. So in all 3 scenarios, you see the devastation of relationships, and it's on weed, alcohol, and prescription drugs. And when we offered it, we used asset forfeiture money. We ended up winning 7 awards. We won 3 Tellys, 1 Marquand, 2 Davies, and 1 Communicator Award. And basically, that was the community that wrote that. And that again, hand delivering it. And then you partner, right? So John Venzer and I know each other very well. Anthony Rizzuto, who's in the audience. District Attorney Tim Sini, who used to be the commissioner, I know him very well. We have been partnering together all along, trying so hard to fight this, right? We want to keep everybody healthy, and we want you all to be safe. So what do? We become members, and this is some of the places that I, on a monthly basis, I'm on the Heroin Prevention Task Force. I'm on 2 subcommittees, the education subcommittees, where we put on conferences. I'm also on the Felony Diversion Court. District Court, I'm on the Reclaiming Futures Subcommittee. Safe Center, I'm on the Child Neglect Substance Abuse Task Force. Senator Brooks' Opiate Work Group. I'm on FIST, Families in Support of Treatment Advisory Board, Drug-Free Long Island Sector Board, and numerous coalitions as well. We're partnering. You try and do as much as you possibly can, but education is from awareness. When you are aware of something and you're not fearful of it, you can manage, and we can teach you how to cope. When you're hiding from it, especially me with this, okay, it can take a hold of you, right? So how do you empower yourself? Is knowledge. And how do you have knowledge? Is by speaking. right? And so here are some of the places where I've spoken to. Houses of worship are the most powerful places in a community to bring people together so that you can speak about it. These are some of the pictures of many of the places. Of course, if you see the students, that's where I like to work the best. I have said that I have just recently retired from Nassau County Police, but I have not retired. That might be from the rank and file, but I have not retired from this quest to work with young people. I really want them to make great choices. And so the evolution of opiates to the perfect storm. Heroin is a title, right? But I really want to speak about addiction and recovery and about choices that we all have, and about different and healthy networks that we can get involved in. The number one thing is, if you see something, if you know something, if you hear something, please say something. Anything I can do to help you, here's my information. I just wanted to be quick, and I want to hand it off to John Venza. Thank you.
Before John speaks, I want to introduce him. Our next guest is, like me, he knows firsthand the horrors of opioid abuse and what it does to families. John Venza is the Vice President of Outreach in Brentwood, and it is the largest residential adolescent substance abuse treatment program in the downstate region. He deals with kids in treatment every day, but sadly, it hit home with him when he lost his 21-year-old son. His name was Garrett, from an overdose in November of 2016. Please welcome John Venza.
Okay. Thank you, folks, for having me to your school, to your community. I have a few slides tonight. This is which way do I point, Dan? Out here someplace? All right. Okay. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a different role. You know, when Connie contacted me and asked me to speak, the time frame was very short. I'm used to doing 2-hour, half-day, full-day trainings. I've trained folks, professionals across the island I've been in the field past 35 years. I've authored 5 graduate courses for Stony Brook on adolescence. So it was a little bit of a different shtick to try and get in here for a short period of time. And my biggest challenge was deciding what I could speak about in that amount of time. That's Outreach House 2 in Brentwood, Long Island. That we have about 45 adolescents between the ages of 12 and 18 there. I've helped a lot of kids from your communities and out further east. They get to live there for almost a year, go to school there, and thank goodness we've been able to save a lot of lives over the past few decades. That's Outreach House 1, which we opened in 1984 in Ridgewood. I oversee all their services in New York and Long Island. We have another 40 kids in there. Those kids are from the 5 boroughs. Drugs of choice, a little bit different there. It's not so much the opioids. That's unfortunately hit our neck of the woods. There's a couple articles, and this is a little bit of my own twist of irony. These are a couple young ladies that I've been able to pull back at Outreach from their opioid addiction back in the 90s. And this was an article I collaborated with another provider and a few of my kids in April of 2000. And I will read you the title of this article in the New York Times. Face of heroin. It's younger, it's suburban. Cheaper versions reach youth who haven't seen its damage. April 25th, 2000. Unfortunately, back then when I was rallying the troops, I was like Chicken Little and the sky was falling when I was talking about young people and heroin. As I started to see kids coming into my Long Island facility and scratching my head going, young kids and heroin. This was the 90s. I wish I was wrong. As was mentioned, November 2016, I lost my son. And before I go in and tell that story, I'd like to pause for one moment. Suffolk County District Attorney Tim Sinney, the rest of the law enforcement chief, I'd like to applaud all the efforts and the ground we have been making. You know, folks, you may not realize this. This opioid epidemic didn't happen 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 3 years ago. It started in the late 80s, early 90s when kids in rural areas of Pennsylvania were going down to Philadelphia to cop their dope and bring it back. And then suddenly we had a few kids on Long Island that were going into Brooklyn and bringing it out there, because I was working with those kids in the 90s. This opioid epidemic has had almost a 25-year head start on us. And law enforcement in the last few years has worked diligently to push back at it. So I just wanted to take that moment to applaud that and applaud the efforts of these folks. I'm going to share with you, I'm going to bring you into my living room for a second, because you know what, I can do the numbers and the statistics. I've been doing it for a long, long time. And this is the first time that I haven't spoke about my child in part of a training presentation, but just as a parent. And that's Garrett and my daughter Kiki. Because these numbers, sometimes we forget about the people behind the numbers. Because we did science projects together like everybody else. We went to football games together like everybody else. He was a heck of a wrestler. Never pinned till 11th grade. Warm-hearted kid, 14 years martial arts, ground fighting, zero fear. Unfortunately, I wish he had just a little bit of fear. Went to Disney like everybody else. And I like to show all those specific pictures because one of the things that I said in my role as a professional and having so many years in this field, and then it hitting me, despite all the love and all the information and all the education, is that for all the people out there that are still struggling with the shame and the stigma of an unflattering death, that don't be shamed, there's no stigma. These are nothing but young kids that made a bad choice. And I ask each of you out there to think about your 5 worst decisions, or the 5 worst things you did at 17, 18, or 19. Probably would be embarrassed to remember those things, right? And then ask yourself, should any of them have the consequence of death? So we shouldn't be ashamed. There's no shame, and we're going to shed the stigma. You know, if I was out there tonight, I'd say, wow, this guy's been in the field for so long. Had all this information, shared this with his kid. So where did it go wrong? Like what could we pick out of your brain if you were to share with us? Well, you know, after I got past the fact that oncologists lose children to cancer and cardiologists lose children to heart disease, I made peace with myself that therapists and treatment professionals also lose their kids to addiction. And then I freed up. But if I was to look back at 2 pieces that I would throw out to parents out there that I kind of came away with for tonight, and where did it go wrong? Well, while there are no absolutes, here are 2 thoughts. The first one is that substance use doesn't begin with the opioids. You know, when we were in the 70s and the 80s, we heard about gateway and gateway drugs and gateway theory. Well, gateway theory is very real. And right now we're at a very interesting time because we're seeing the strongest strains of weed ever seen before. We're seeing cannabinoid oils at 75%. We're seeing concentrated THC and wax. And we're seeing a big generation gap because when a kid tells a parent, well, I'm just smoking a little pot, and the parent doesn't realize the thing they're holding in their hand is a cartridge for a dank tank. And the progression of their addiction is going to be much more rapid than 30 years ago of that 1 to 2% THC weed, not the 15 or 20% that they're smoking. We have a lot of work to do to educate. I'm not going to tell you that every kid that smokes pot is going to be a heroin addict or an opioid abuser. But in my 35 years and the tens of thousands of young people I've worked with, just about every heroin addict and opioid user smoked pot on a pretty regular basis at some point. There was the prerequisite training to addiction. You learn how to buy, sell, use different routes of administration, manipulate, get over, lie to your parents. All the skills that you needed to use other drugs were in place with that gateway. So when I look back at that, and I found out that towards the end of 11th grade, 12th grade, he began to smoke a little bit because, of course, his friends all got honest. When? After he passed. He worked real hard. With a dad like me, he had to work real hard to get over. but he got over. And, you know, the second piece is that when we talk about resiliency and prevention, and Pam could certainly jump on this, one of the single most important protective factors for a young person is a healthy adult caring role model in their lives. And I'm talking past mom and dad, and hopefully mom or dad are a couple of those folks. But I'm talking coaches, I'm talking other people. And he had that for a long, long time. He had that with his sensei, he had that with his wrestling coaches, but unfortunately when he had a blood clot disorder in 11th grade, he never went back to those things. And I think that was the beginning of the end because the protective factors were compromised. So, my daughter, just in case there's a few of you still wondering what type of family did this kid come from, what type of families do these kids come from, my daughter is there with her coach, wonderful person. Who took them all the way to the U15 national championships, best team in the country at 15 years old, and helped her get a scholarship to play lacrosse at Ohio State. Same family, same lessons, same information, no guarantees. We do the best we can with the resources we have, folks, as parents, but let's do two things. Let's not make it okay for our kids to smoke pot, and let's make sure that we insulate them with the best caring, healthy adult role models we can insert in their lives possible. Those two things, I think, will give them a fighting chance. No absolutes. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, John. So we have one more introductory speaker. We're very fortunate to have our newly elected Suffolk County District Attorney here with us today, Tim Sinney. He's former commissioner of Suffolk County Police Department. He's also formerly a federal prosecutor. He's got a really tough job between the gang violence and the opioid epidemic. He has hit the ground running. He is a serious guy with a mission to really take care of these problems head on, doing so much work throughout the county on those issues and other issues. And tonight, obviously, our focus is on the opioid epidemic. So without further ado, Tim Sinney, our district attorney.
Well, good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you for being here. The fact that you are all here, taking the time out of your busy schedules to meet with your community and to talk about this important issue is certainly an excellent step forward. We have been doing forums like this throughout the county, and it is clear that there's an energy in Southampton right now around this issue, and that makes me very excited. And it's in large part due to the community, and it's also in large part due to the leaders on this task force and sitting up here on this stage. So I applaud them for their efforts. First of all, let me be very clear. As a law enforcement leader in this county, I think it's very important to talk with clarity. I was the Suffolk County Police Commissioner up until December 31st. I took office on January 1 as your Suffolk County District Attorney. And as the chief law enforcement official in the county, let me be very clear. Addiction is a disease, and it must be treated accordingly. There certainly is an important role for traditional law enforcement on the supply side, targeting drug dealers, targeting drug traffickers. But we are not going to arrest ourselves out of this epidemic. It is a public health issue first and foremost, and we need to allow that concept to inform our policies, both on the enforcement side and on the prevention, treatment, and recovery side. So that philosophy I took into the police department, and I'm taking it into the district attorney's office as well. I was asked to talk about enforcement and law enforcement's role, and I will talk about some traditional enforcement, but I'm going to quickly pivot into intervention, because I think that's where we need to focus a lot of our attention in law enforcement. But make no mistake about it, there is a tremendous amount of enforcement occurring in Suffolk County. In terms of targeting drug dealers, we have a robust relationship with the Drug Enforcement Administration, which was not always the case, and we have numerous detectives assigned to the DEA, and we are targeting drug traffickers throughout the country in collaboration with the DEA, because we do believe that we want to make it as hard as possible to have drugs come into Suffolk County. Drugs are coming mostly into Suffolk County through New York City, through Nassau County, into Suffolk. Most of our heroin is still coming from Central and South America, though some of it does come from the Middle East. But of course, we are now in a full-blown fentanyl epidemic, which is synthetic, and the dangerous aspect of fentanyl is that it can be manufactured anywhere. Typically, it is manufactured in labs in China and other parts of Asia, and then smuggled here still through South and Central America, sometimes mailed directly into our ports, oftentimes mailed directly to homes and other drug spots throughout our country. But certainly that new threat poses unique challenges to law enforcement. So working with the DEA, which has a national and international reach, is critically important to our efforts. We've also, in the Suffolk County Police Department, and I know your chief here is similarly focused, we've increased our resources in targeting drug spots in our communities. We've increased the number of detectives in our precincts who are focused on drug dealing in our communities, and we rolled out a hotline, 631-852-NARC, N-A-R-C, which is a partnership with the Suffolk County Crime Stoppers, where we'll provide money for tips that lead to arrest. You can remain anonymous even if you receive a cash reward. And due to the increase in resources and the tips hotline, we've been able to increase the number of narcotic search warrants by over 250% since I took office as police commissioner. And what that does is very important, because when you execute a search warrant at a narcotics location, you're doing several different things. You're disrupting operations, you're recovering extremely deadly drugs from the street, and approximately 30% of those search warrants are recovering illegal firearms. You're sending a message to drug dealers that we're not going to tolerate this, don't get comfortable. And it sends a message to the community too. It sets a standard of norms. We're not going to tolerate drug dealing in our community. And we know that we're not going to arrest ourselves out of this, but we're not going to make it easy for drug dealers to peddle poison on our streets. And that in turn not only helps us establish norms, but it also incentivizes individuals to cooperate with law enforcement, because they see the results. When we execute a search warrant, it's a production, and people know about it in the community, they know about it on the block, and that encourages folks that something is occurring. We've also rolled out a program that the chief talked about here in Southampton, where we investigate every overdose essentially like a crime. And we send homicide to our fatal overdoses. But what I was finding was that there are so many non-fatal overdoses, in part because of Narcan training and the widespread use of Narcan. Some of these investigations, frankly, were falling through the cracks. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of non-fatal overdoses in Suffolk County per year. There are well over 800 Narcan saves in Suffolk County last year, and those are just the reported ones. So we started a pilot program in the 6th precinct where we had a field intelligence officer, and now we have 2, basically a detective who exclusively focuses on investigating non-fatal drug overdoses with the objective of tying those overdoses to drug dealers so that we can target those drug dealers. We also started the Long Island Heroin Task Force, and this was a partnership that the chief and I were able to roll out before the chief came to Southampton and he was in Nassau County. It's the first ever bi-county enforcement task force, consisting of Suffolk and Nassau County police detectives, and now it consists of federal and state partners. And the goal was to target drug dealers who were causing overdoses. And in fact, we were able to secure resources from HIDTA, the High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area. It's essentially a federal program, really is a grants program, a coordination program, a very important program to our drug effort. So if you ever hear about the feds trying to cut HIDTA, that's a bad thing. So we were able to secure a drug analyst through HIDTA who looks at every single overdose in Suffolk County, really slices and dices that data, and then we use that data to target drug dealers, to target drug spots, with the ultimate objective of reducing overdoses. And we made an arrest for the first time in Suffolk County of an individual who caused an overdose, merely by a fatal overdose, merely by selling drugs, not, for example, by injecting someone. And we charged them with manslaughter in the second degree. And it's my understanding that it was the first ever case of its sort. And when I became district attorney, and that was a product of the Long Island Heroin Task Force that the chief and I put together. And when I became district attorney, it just so happened that case came up for trial. And he ultimately pled guilty to manslaughter in the second degree. And it was the first conviction for manslaughter for an individual who merely caused death merely by selling drugs. So that's a landmark case. And then 2 weeks later, we had another one. So we now have two in the state of New York, both in Suffolk County. And one of the lessons there, however, is it shouldn't be so difficult to hold people accountable for killing people. And we have to use innovative strategies, and we have to risk-proof issues. It's not always easy proving manslaughter in the second degree. You got to essentially prove that the person recklessly caused someone's death. There should simply be a statute in the New York books that says if you sell drugs, if you make the decision to sell poison and you kill someone, you should be charged with murder. It's that simple, and I urge all of you to ask your legislators, your state legislators, to pass that statute. So those are some of the traditional law enforcement initiatives we had going on in the Suffolk County Police Department and certainly throughout the county. As DA, I can tell you that we essentially have a philosophy, it's a two-pronged philosophy. We are going to treat drug dealers extremely aggressively, and in many instances, where appropriate, like murderers. However, when it comes to low-level offenders, individuals who are essentially criminally involved in the criminal justice system because of their addiction, they're being arrested for possession or even larceny or other property crimes, we need to take that as an opportunity for intervention. And the way I view the criminal justice system's responsibility on this issue is that there's essentially a spectrum of opportunities for intervention. There's where someone is clearly using and they haven't yet been arrested. There's someone who's been arrested but they haven't yet been put through the system. There are people who are in the system. There are people who are in jail. There are people who are getting out of jail. At every single one of those opportunities, law enforcement needs to be involved in doing everything it can to incentivize treatment and recovery. So in the police department, we rolled out a program just this past November called PIVOT, Preventing Incarceration via Opportunities for Treatment. And essentially, it's a strategic partnership between the Suffolk County Police Department and the Long Island Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependency, also known as LICAD. And we use asset forfeiture dollars to fund the program. And essentially what it does is we charge all members of the police department that if they know someone through intelligence or through direct contact that is suffering from addiction, they should refer that person to LICAD for treatment. LICAD specializes in coaching, among other things, in coaching people into treatment. Then we have relationships with OASIS licensed facilities throughout the region, here in our own community, that will guarantee a bed for anyone who accepts treatment. Excellent partners like Outreach. So it's not just how do I build a case against someone if we know they're involved in using drugs? Quite the opposite. How can I help this person? And the message that LICAD delivers is very clear. I received your information from the Suffolk County Police Department. You're heading down the wrong path, and we care about you, and we want to help. And here's how we can help. So that's pre-arrest. Now, I was shocked, frankly, of how successful the program is. And I may give you the stat, and you may say that doesn't sound too good. But those who are in the substance abuse world and law enforcement, I think, will agree it's quite impressive. 10% of the individuals referred by the Suffolk County Police Department not only accepted the interaction, not only listened and and engaged actually enrolled in an OASIS licensed treatment center. We've made contact with over 80% of the individuals. 10%, as I said, accepted treatment. And many others accepted counseling, and then they lost contact. And we're collecting a lot of data. But I am optimistic that this program will continue to be successful. So the next phase is post-arrest. Someone gets arrested for a drug offense, or someone gets arrested for a low-level offense, and we know it's because of their drug addiction. We just put them through the system. Well, I can tell you, those who come out of specialty courts, like a drug treatment court, are 80% less likely to recidivate, meaning commit a crime again, than those who are put through the traditional criminal justice system. That's great, and we need to invest in our drug treatment courts and our specialty courts. But oftentimes, people are given the option, and they say no. And I'll tell you a little secret about that, and I apologize to the defense lawyers in the room ahead of time. It's largely driven by the defense bar. Because in the past, they could get a plea deal, and it's too risky to put someone into the treatment court. And also, just because the system takes time, you get arrested, basically you say, I'll do anything to get out of this mess, I'll do anything, but then some time passes, and you realize, oh, this isn't so bad, I'll take my 30 days in jail, I'll take whatever and move on. So we needed to come up with a way, how do we capture that energy to get help, right? That energy to get help that sometimes is there after an arrest, that doesn't fade after someone's had time to cool off, or had been time to analyze the legal case with a defense attorney who's looking at it from a simple risk assessment perspective, not a how can I help you life perspective. So we're now in development phases of having a post-arrest pre-arraignment diversion program, and we're bringing all the stakeholders in, including legal aid, the courts, treatment centers, organizations like LICAD, where if you're arrested and you agree to go into treatment and you meaningfully engage, that case will be dismissed. And I believe that that will materially incentivize folks to accept treatment. And there are programs like this throughout the country. I won't say many, but there's certainly programs throughout the country like this, and they've had great results. So that's sort of the next step on that spectrum of opportunities for intervention. But at the end of the day, the message is we're in one of the worst epidemics our country has ever seen. Although there are some reasons to be optimistic, the overdose data, the preliminary data, does show some signs of improvement for 2018. We have this new threat involving fentanyl that poses all sorts of risks. And the problem's complex. And law enforcement's job is to use the opportunities where we are forced to be involved to help the person. It's that simple. And what I hope to do as DA is get buy-in into this idea of the spectrum of opportunities for intervention, and hopefully we can move the needle on this issue. But I will sort of wrap up by saying the biggest thing we can do on this issue is what Pam Stark was talking about. It's that simple. It's prevention. And it's meetings like this, and it's people like you who care about your community, who are going to be smart about how you manage your community, and bringing back programs like Too Good for Drugs to your schools, and not just doing one auditorium forum, but doing solid K through 12 evidence-based drug prevention programs. That will not only help us get out of this epidemic, but it will prevent the next one. Thank you very much, and thank you for all your support of law enforcement and your work on this issue.
Thank you very much, Tim. It's time now to open up to the audience, and we're free. We will make it free to ask questions to some of the experts on the task force with us tonight, or any of the speakers who are up here on the stage. So we will try to direct your questions to the right person. I'd like you to form two lines. Notice there are two microphones here in the aisles. Try to keep your comments and questions short, please, and make sure to sign in the sheet there by the microphone so you can be part of our email list for future events. So let's have some questions, and please begin right over here. Yes, young man, right there.
Young man, thank you very much. My name is Peter Gideon, 75 years old, and have never been a common drug user my entire life. It's a successful career. And then I started getting some injuries. Started out with a torn rotator cuff, which ended up being having to replace a whole shoulder. And that was in New York City at Lenox Hill Hospital. And when I got through with the surgery, they handed me a whole bunch of opiates. Said, you're going to need these, take them. And they gave me a prescription that went on and on and on. Shortly thereafter, I started having leg pains. Went to the hospital for special surgery. They found that I had a spine problem, stenosis of my spine. Had to go in for surgery 3 years ago, first surgery. What do? They give you a handful of opiates, and they say, you're going to need these, take them as prescribed, and we'll renew them as you need them. A year later, I go in for 2 more spine surgeries, and there's no stopping it. They just keep writing them and writing them and writing them. And in my opinion, the problems, you all are looking at it from a law enforcement and criminal standpoint. To me, the doctors that prescribe that kind of pain medication and the amount that they give you. Was that me?
No, that's all right. Just keep going.
Mackerel.
It's all right.
That was a DEA.
You know, I'm not going to mention any doctors' names, and they don't talk about me, I don't talk about them. But they have a prescription pad in front of them, and if you're in chronic pain, they'll give you whatever you need. I was very fortunate. I mean, I was on them for 3 years, every single day. I'm not an addictive personality, fortunately, but I did what I was told, take them. Now, probably I was addicted to them, but fortunately, I met a doctor, this doctor right here, Alfred Kulik, and he prescribed some alternative things. Today, I don't do anything, just what he takes care of for me, and I haven't done an opioid in 9 months, 10 months, and have no desire to do it, and will not do it. Now, if I have to have surgery again, I don't know that you can tell a hospital when you're in pain that they can't give you a drip of morphine or whatever it is. But when you walk out of that hospital with that piece of paper and you can fill it at any pharmacy or where your insurance allows, and you take it, you're on the road. So I just wanted to, that's my story.
All right.
And
Well, thankfully, you have a good person there advising you alternative forms of pain relief. Is Dr. Van Arsdale here?
no,
He had to leave.
He
He
did?
was
Okay.
here, and then he just left 10 minutes ago.
At our medical forum, we found out that there are new restrictions now in New York State where opioid, OxyContin, and other opioids cannot be prescribed for more than 7 days.
really.
Under specific circumstances. So, yeah, the state is getting the message and they are clamping down. But again, you know, like you said, there are alternative forms that are just as good or maybe even more effective than opioids.
Well, I got up one morning and I said, I'm not doing these anymore. And fortunately, a good doctor here, I had met him
Good for you.
on a whole different occasion, but we started talking,
Yeah.
and he helped me along, and I don't do them, I don't want them, and I don't think you...
Good story. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, please.
This is Dr. Alfred Kulik.
We'll get to him.
Hi,
Hi,
Oh, I'm
everybody.
sorry. Apologize.
Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Kathleen McCabe. I am a woman in long-term recovery. I am also the widow of an opiate overdose casualty. I'm a credentialed alcohol and substance abuse counselor as well in training. And something happened. I heard last, I guess it was September, about a young lady named Hallie. And I didn't know her, but it struck home for me for some reason. And I started getting more involved, and I came to, and I didn't realize that she was a relation to you, Drew, and I appreciate your being here. Anyway, I got involved, I came down, I heard about the drug task force, I went to the Hampton Bays. I just want to let you guys know, since I've been there, I've been trained in Narcan. I've joined Long Island Recovery Association. I became an advocate and went up to Albany and spoke to, was Mr. Senator Lavalle's people here? Hi, how are you? Oh my God, you guys were so nice. It was very empowering. We had a bunch of asks. Thank you for being here. I don't know what it was, but something touched my heart with your daughter's story. I do not have children of my own, but I had worked for one of the local rehabs, and we've got a lot out here, but something's missing. Pam, I loved what you were saying. I'm doing a group empowering young ladies in general, but there are tools for prevention kind of hidden in it. And I was invited down to Washington, D.C. most recently. Anyway, all of that is because of the first drug task force that I attended a few months ago. And I, again, want to thank you. I am ridiculously disappointed that there are not parents from this high school here. This is my community. Your kids are my kids. Oh, there's 3. Good for you guys. Good for you guys.
Yeah, and a number of them will be watching on CTV, and a number of them will be watching on Facebook Live.
I'm hoping that they're watching. It's all about prevention. I got clean at 50 years old. It doesn't have to be that way, and I'm one of the fortunate ones. Prevention is where it's at. I have your number. I would love to give you a call and get more involved. I don't want my ego to take over, and I want to do it my way and have my thing. I would like to be, I'm in training to be a bigger part of what you guys are doing, and thank you. Kudos.
Thank you for talking to us. Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Diane Newman. I work at the Dunes in East Hampton. I want to talk about the kids. Because, kids do not like to be preached to, and I've watched this generation of kids, who's going to be the largest generation since the baby boomers, and I've watched them, and they've given me so much hope. When I watch these kids after the Parkland shooting organize and protest, and they're articulate, and they're smart, why can't we get the kids to get motivated like that against this cause? I think that's something that we really have to work for in all of our communities, because nobody is going to listen to the kids like the kids. And when, I'm not sure who it was who said, you don't learn anything unless you actually are able to teach it. And these kids are teaching each other about what's right. They understand constitutional law. They're also simultaneously watching their friends die. And I think that we can motivate them and give them the power to speak for themselves. So I'm not sure, this is sort of a rhetorical question. I'm not sure exactly how we do it, but I think we need to give the baton to them and let them do it in their own voice and not our voices translated. I think they know it better than us. So, again, this is a rhetorical question. I'm not a teacher. I'm not a counselor. I am the mother of 3, and I've watched my children grow and be part of a generation that is incredibly tolerant, that is incredibly passionate, and really well educated. I think that, we need to let these kids do it for themselves. And I'm not sure how to do that, but I think that we need to think about it. Yes.
Oh.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Father Constantine Lazarakis. I'm on the subcommittee for prevention, and we've held 2 youth forums that were geared in the way that you're talking about. So we have about 50 young people in the room, and we presented to them, here's what's going on, here's the crisis, what do you feel you need, what do you feel your peers needs? They came up with a big, long list. At the second forum, we tried to narrow that down to 2 or 3 executable goals that they could advocate for themselves. And so we'd love further input on how to better do it, but we're actually, one of the things the Prevention Committee is doing is bringing high schoolers, next step maybe young adults, together, having them formulate what they believe the best solutions are for the problems are, and having them both talk about that amongst their peers and also advocate for that with community leaders. So we are trying our best. It's not perfect, but we are trying our best to have them articulate in their own voice to one another and to their community leaders what they believe they need to combat the crisis. So just so you know, that's part of the program.
We've also made a start with the 30 police explorers who were right here on the stage with us tonight. So that's a start. We've got to start somewhere, and we've got the ball rolling now. We hope it's going to gather steam some more. But thank you for your comments.
Sure.
Drew, I just want to add to that a little bit.
Yes.
Addressing this young lady. I'm on the prevention subcommittee, and I work with. I lost it. Okay, there it is. Going to what you were saying, these kids were telling me they're tired of seeing people with substance use disorders who are now in recovery. They're tired of hearing them come in and talk about how they ruined their lives. I was going off the notes on my phone, but they want to hear people come in. And talk about how they avoided that. They don't want to hear people talk about how they ruined their lives. So that's what we need to start doing. I agree. They don't want to see old people with PowerPoints. That doesn't work anymore. So I asked them what they want. They said they want people around.
Just press your mic button again. There.
Okay. They said they want people their age, around my age, I'm 23, to talk to them because we know how to relate. So we need to stop with the old people with PowerPoints. We need to stop with the people that talk about how they ruin their lives. I think that's the first step that we should move towards.
I completely agree, and I think we need people talking to them who look like them, I think we need people talking, I mean, no offense, but I think we need people talking to them who look like them and not like kids in uniforms. I think they need like cool kids talking to them. And I think that's really important, somebody who they can identify with. And I think we need to give that a little thought.
Mackenzie, you want to say something?
I think that we need less white-collar people and more people with experience in this subject matter. More people with emotions on this, rather than people who really don't have any feelings towards it and just information from books. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Mackenzie. Mackenzie is one of our task force members. She's 16 years old, and she's made some recommendations on how to reach young people in the schools. Yes, please, your question.
Okay, I am not a public speaker, so I wrote down some notes. I hope that's okay.
Just keep it short.
It's already hit home for me. I don't have a lot of answers, but I have some suggestions. While my family is currently in recovery, it's been a very long road for us. I'm encouraged that the spotlight is shining brightly on overprescribing of opioids, but we must do more. We all need to empty our medicine cabinets of unused medicine. And we need to lock up our alcohol. This is such a large source of saleable escape for our children. Teenagers experiment, it's a fact. And this part is harsh, and I apologize. I just couldn't. I think schools need to take a first responder approach and no longer turn a blind eye to drugs in schools. Drugs are just as dangerous as guns. Schools need to worry less about public perception and more about their students. Teachers should be encouraged to speak up about suspicion of drug activity. One drug leads to another with our teenagers. We need to stop it before their casual drug use becomes addiction and reality. I believe drug court works. Eventually, I would love to see graduates of the program speak to students in school, perhaps offer incentive to them to carry the message to their peers. Kids will hear kids. Maybe pair them with the Explorers or Too Good for Drugs. I'd also like to see the participants of drug court attend NA meetings specifically, even if it's only once a week. AA is not enough. Regarding treatment, kids who overdose or hit bottom should be required to get inpatient treatment more than detox. I'd like to see treatment to be at least 28 days to help with an addiction. Longer would be better to help with those with a serious addiction to get off of the merry-go-round of treatment, relapse, treatment, relapse. The costs to society are great. The family unit, financial and medical, hospitalizations, legal fees, and eventually loss of jobs. Inaction will only promote and perpetuate the problems addictions cause. Thank you.
Thank you. Might point out on the task force, every school superintendent in the town of Southampton is on our task force. So they get the message, believe me. Yeah, and there are several here tonight. We thank them for their... Yeah, Lars from Hampton Bays is here also. Yes, please. Doctor?
Yeah. There is no solution without alternative. So I was very pleased to hear that that was part of the phraseology of the task force. And we're speaking of alternatives. I'm Dr. Alfred Kulik. I'm a medical doctor and surgeon. I'm also the brother of an addict. I'm also the brother of a dead brother. So my credentials started back when we used to call this a problem. And then one day it became a crisis. And one day it became an epidemic. And now literally the terminology and the metaphors are a war on. And again, like the headlines you showed, you're like, you were Chicken Little. It's like this has been going on a long time. We can analyze a lot of the causes. We don't want to get a big argument about is it, drug companies and big pharma or, czars, drug czars and government officials. We want to address causes because each particular cause you have to address. Certain things we can't change, but we can look at alternatives to some of these solutions. And again, as a scientist, I think solutions meaning treatment, like drugs versus drugs. But listening to everyone, I realized alternatives are on every level. For instance, law enforcement. If your alternatives are only jail or no jail, there's no alternative. We have to make an alternative treatment. It really starts even sooner than that, like what Pam was saying about kids have something to say. They have their problems. They have their inner demons. If they have nowhere to go, what's the alternative? If they can't go to mom and dad, or they can't go to that cool counselor, or they can't go to an educated, compassionate person, they will go somewhere. They will always find the path, and it will be a peer who will give them bad suggestions. If someone's in pain, the biggest problem is pain. Where our minds and our bodies, we feel pleasure, we feel pain. When you're in pain, you need to be treated for pain. Interesting, in med school, actually, we were taught not to prescribe opiates. That was my generation. We were told it's addictive. So we weren't giving 90-year-olds in cancer, dying of cancer, opiates. And there was a huge backlash that we were cruel and, letting people suffer. So then the backlash led to more prescription. Then there was the next backlash, which says the doctors are prescribing too much. So what happens? There was no alternative. So they cut back. Well, part of our young people dying was actually grandma and grandpa also using. Because what happened is when the medical community and the legislative community cut back on legal prescription, that was part of the perfect storm for heroin and other illicit chemicals to step in. Because just because you make a law doesn't mean the person wakes up the next day not in pain or doesn't wake up not addicted. So there was no alternative. Path of least resistance was to go to heroin. It was readily available. So again, we see alternatives on every level. Every drug is a gateway drug. Any drug can lead to any other drug. The key is we have to gain control of it. So again, if we make something illegal or we legislate against it or with good faith create a law that plugs one pathway, things will travel another. Even the biggest river, no dam blocks a river. Every mighty dam has conduits around it that allows the energy and things to flow around it. So it's not so much making things legal or illegal, it's more putting it in our control. Just an example, I write medical marijuana in New Jersey as well as New York. New Jersey just made it an indication for anxiety. Now, as a scientist, I can tell you, I don't know why, because there's actually no studies on it. What I can tell you is that morning my phone was ringing off the hook, and it was all young people. They already were saying, like confessing, I use marijuana all the time for my stress, desire, my social phobias. I'm using it for my PTSD. I'm using it for my anxiety. So they're already using the marijuana, but it's the street stuff, which is bad for a good reason. Because it's illegal, again, you put the power in someone else's hands. They have to smuggle it, which means they have to have a high concentration of the psychoactive elements, because they can't have a big open container coming in with stuff. They have to make a concentrate. So the illegal street stuff is actually bad stuff. Absolutely, it's bad stuff. So I literally had an outpouring of young people saying they wanted an alternative. They wanted to get off the street stuff, and they were looking for medicines. And unfortunately, some of the traditional medications just weren't working. My introduction to addiction was I admitted my own brother for heroin addiction into my hospital where I was doing eye surgery. I put him in under an assumed name. At the time, it was the state-of-the-art detox medicines we put him on. All that did was sober him up enough that he could go out the window to score again, sneak back into the hospital, and then get his warm meal in a bed. You know, again, if we don't have alternatives, we're humans, and we will find another pathway. So again, you know, I can see obviously part of those big statistics of opiate deaths being more than car accidents, the heartbreak is the grandchildren. But really that huge number is a huge number because it's also grandma and grandpa dying of respiratory failure on the opiates. You know, so there's a lot of solutions are necessary because there's a lot of causes. But I think how it ties in also to the young people are the trickle down is that when we took away some of the pain options in the adult populations, we flooded the market, which made it easier for the kids to get it. I was talking to two young teenagers in front of the supermarket, and they were raising some money. We started talking about heroin. And being the ignorant grown-up, because we're not cool, we don't know anything, I was like, how the heck do you get heroin? And they laughed in my face. And they said, it's so easy. And meanwhile, to get some of our alternatives is very difficult, either because there's no legislation to help us, or no really cool counselor to talk to, or no programs in the school, or the hands of the law are tied with no alternatives. Or even me as a doctor, people don't know how to find me when there's good alternatives. So we're humans. We're always going to go the path of least resistance. So I'm so glad you put the word alternative in there, because there's no solution without alternatives.
Thank you for your comments. Thank you. Yes, please.
Okay, I don't know if I can follow up on that. I'm Tony from Bridgehampton. I've been in the fire department for over...
Just pull the mic up a little closer.
I've been in the fire department for over 16, 17 years. We do training on drug overdose and everything like that. But I'm going to tell you right now, you can't stop it. Right now, I guarantee you, right now in this school, Bridgehampton, Sag Harbor, East Hampton, Montauk, kids are they're doing drugs as we speak now. They might not tell you, but they're doing it. Also, where was this panel? Where was this panel when we actually needed it in the minority community, back when we had the major crack epidemic back in the days? Where was this? You know, I had family members that were sitting up here doing crack. You know what I'm saying? I still have one right now. I got to look out for him. I got to make sure that he's all right, because I'm the only one that's going to see and talk to him. But I want to know, where was this panel at? This is back, I'm talking like the major crack epidemic was back in the late 70s, early 80s. Where was this? You want to bring this up now? This is the wrong time. This should have been out, especially when the guys would come back from Vietnam. Should have been out then. I'm saying this is a little bit too late. And also to the police chief, when you came down to the CAC meeting, I told you, let's go and discuss this. 7 months later, you still haven't reached out to me. And I said, let's go ahead and bring up all the minority leaders, whatever, bring it up to the church, all the church leaders, and have some type of discussion. And you was at the CAC meeting, and I told you, don't shake your head. I told you, let's go ahead and do this. And you said, okay. And then after that, you didn't talk to me for 7 months. So that's wrong right there. And you are a public servant. You're supposed to answer me. Okay? Have a nice day.
So I understand what you said, sir, about the minority representation. I know I look white. I'm actually Hispanic. ¿Tenemos gente aquí que habla en español? Okay, great. So if you need help reaching out to the Hispanic community, yo te puedo ayudar. So if you guys need help reaching the Hispanic community, my name is Eric Saldivar. Reach out to me, and I'll help you out along with the task force.
Thank you. Yes, please.
How you doing, sir? My name is Wayne T. Duncan. I want to say hello to all my relatives here in this community. My son went to this school, and we went through a lot of trials and tribulations, but he's now, he's a social worker, getting his doctorate in social work, and he's fighting the fight. I want to say what I just want to share, and it's really brief, is that when I was 35 years ago, I'm 60, but Lieutenant Tom Talmadge, he was a state trooper back then, and we became really close. We made a pledge, and we looked at each other, and it was on the Shinnecock Indian Reservation. He patrolled there a lot, and I have relatives there. My son is Shinnecock and Cherokee, and we made a pledge to each other years ago. It was like, look, man, we work out, we train, we don't drink, we don't smoke, we don't take any drugs, and we like each other, so we're going to be brothers for life, and we're going to fight every day to help at least one, if we can save one. And what I'm saying is that, the sadness is that all the panels, all the losses. I mean, I have numerous relatives who died early because of drug abuse. But I just say this, that I'm a warrior. I'm in the fight every single day, no matter where I'm at, to save anyone. And I'm totally sober, totally clear. I'm 60, and it's not like I'm better than somebody else. This is a serious issue. And there's a lot of pain that goes on because, when you see your babies die, it's horrible. But I can just tell you this, that there's, my nephew he's my adopted nephew, he's sitting here on the boards, Sage. And it's humbling because I look at Eric, I've been mentoring him, and he's stepping up, holding it down. And it fills my heart with tears, because I'm a warrior. I can cry about this because me and Lieutenant Tom Talmadge, who was, I think he's assistant DA, or I don't know if he's still in the district attorney left, but I was going to ask him if he was still there. We're going to fight this until my last breath. So I always say this, that there's a lot of problems in communities because people bump into things. I'm a Cherokee Indian, and Shinnecock Reservation is important to me. And that fight every day is painful. But the strength is human beings coming together. This school right here, Southampton High School, we had to come together years ago, and we're coming back again. And I'm just saying, just pay attention to your surroundings. Pay attention to what you can do to help somebody else. We're not going to save everybody, but Tom and myself, we're still in that fight. And, he was one of the greatest state troopers I ever knew, and our relationship was powerful. We saved a lot of human beings. We're doing programs. We're going to restart a scuba program on the res for kids, traditional ceremonials. We're doing that. But you got to lead by example. You can't be pointing the fingers. We're here right now. This is today. What happened in Vietnam, we can't do anything about it. It's over. But what we're going to do now is relatives, all of us. We're a community. Southampton Town Police, state troopers, whatever, just regular human beings. So I just want to say I'm in that fight. And I don't know who's going to help, but I know one thing, that we came here tonight to do something, to make something happen, and I'm glad to see a lot of relationships that I know from the community here. So I'm on board. I don't have a program. I'm one individual. So I thank y'all for just taking this little bit of time, but there's a lot of work we have to do. Sage, I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Yes. Good evening. I'm Brad Bender, and I am a grateful recovering addict, and I'm also a former Southampton Town Councilman. So I'm here tonight because, you know, over the last couple of years, I've been through a lot. I showed up November 15th on the steps of in the basement of a 12-step program, and proceeded to squirm in the chair for the next 3 weeks. I got 90 meetings in 90 days. I got a sponsor. I did step work. 2.5 years later, I'm still clean, and I have sponsees, and I'm still carrying the message. But how did I get to the opioid addiction? I don't know if this is coining a phrase. I'm just going to say medically induced opioid addiction. Medically induced opioid addiction. I had a failing back problem. I had rotator cuff surgery. In order to get a MRI from my insurance company, I needed 12 weeks of a narcotic medication. I got my MRI. Now you get to go to pain management. More narcotic medication, injections in your back. It took me 1.5 years to finally have surgery. By that time, I was well addicted. I had an unscrupulous doctor that over-medicated me, manipulated my addiction to gain medicine from me. I shared my medication with a third party, a single third party, who then sold it. And I went to prison. It's in the papers. You guys all know about it. I can wear that on my sleeve now because this is the truth. I don't have to run and hide from myself or what I did. Most disappointing part of everything is after my indictment, I was alone. The only people that came to me were the people in the basement of the church. Basement of a church. And Jay, you called me too. And Jay, you called me too. Thank you. You're a good man. But how many times, and this, I'm not talking about me at this point, how often are we going to turn our backs on our sick and our dying? Why do you shut the door on the people that you love? Why do you close people out of your lives? Because they had an addiction or a problem. What is it that causes this addiction or this problem? I know what it is for me. I didn't feel good about myself. I feel good about myself today. Where do I fit in? How come I have all this pressure? What's going on in my head? We need to talk to people and find out what the hell's going on so they can figure out how they get to that next place. I went to a basement with lots of other addicts that get it, that I could share my emotions with, how I was feeling. Did I need prison? That was my very first run-in with the law ever. My background investigation revealed one seatbelt ticket. And I went away to prison for, actually I spent 11 months in a residential drug abuse program. And I got 6 months off my sentence. I spent 3 months in a halfway house and 2 months on home detention. The prison is full of drugs and alcohol. It's not a safe place. The halfway house was across from Farragut houses, projects in Brooklyn. Not a safe place. They're selling heroin down at the corner at the Chinese restaurant. So these are the things that I had to overcome. These are the places that I went. I'd rather been at Seafield. I probably could have got the same treatment. And it would have cost you a lot less. Anyway, I'm Brad Bender. I'm a grateful recovering addict, and thank you for letting me have my 2 minutes.
Thank you for sharing your story. We really appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, please. Oh, Paul? I'm sorry, Paul. Go ahead.
My name is Paul. I'm the co-founder of Stepping Stones. I'm also a member of Narcotics Anonymous. I just want to let you know, thank you for sharing your experience, Strength and Hope, and thank you for mentioning Narcotics Anonymous. Since this task force was put together, there's been 2 new open meetings, one in Hampton Bays and one in Southampton. So I just want to let you know, like, Narcotics Anonymous works. I'm a member for 21 years, and I meet in the basements with people like you.
Where are they located? Where are they?
One is in Hampton Bays at 9 Terrace Road, behind the old Hess station. It's called, the meeting is actually called Recovery by the Barn. So, and then the Southampton one is, you have the address, the Southampton one? 9 Shore, okay? So, all right. Thursday night is the Hampton Bays one, and I think Tuesday, does anybody have information on the Southampton? It's actually in, we also have the hotline number for Narcotics Anonymous to give you any information you need to know. All right, thank you.
Go ahead, please. Yes, your question or comment?
So I have a comment and I have a question. So my name is Sarah Nardi. I am a physician assistant. I've worked in medicine for 20 years. I worked at Bellevue Hospital in New York City for 15, where I would say probably 75% of my patients were addicted to something. And I guess I've only been out in Southampton for 2 years now. And I guess my question is, and I appreciate everybody sharing their stories of addiction, and I think everybody knows here that getting sober from addiction is very difficult. When you're addicted to heroin, it's extremely difficult to get clean. And I think the focus, and I believe that the focus should be on prevention. And I haven't heard anybody talk about high school students in this entire meeting. And I think that in the future of changing the opioid crisis is prevention in high school students. And I think actually even when it gets to the point of seniors, it might be a little late. I think you should probably start in middle school and high school, probably 9th, 10th, 11th, not dismissing seniors. And it is shocking to me that in this high school, there has been one mandatory lecture on opioid addiction. And I would like to know why. And I would like to know if that's going to change and what your thoughts are. Because in 180 days of school, with over 1,000 hours, you can have 1 week of March Madness, 1 week, but you can have one mandatory lecture on opioid addiction and crisis, and it's outrageous in Suffolk County. So I want to know why.
All right, thank you, Sarah. We'll see. I think we have somebody who wanted to
I
respond.
would like to answer that my mom got clean and sober. She was 60 years old, and she's doing wonderful. She's 85 and having a great time. There's no age for addiction. It can be as a teen, it can be as a father, it can be as anything.
I didn't say there was an age for addiction.
And we have here a 16-year-old, and that's with us, and the task force is meeting with youngsters. And NA works with youngsters, and we're doing all we can today. We have to look at today and how we're doing now, from now on. The past is the past. We're not going to stare. We're going to look forward. That's what we're trying to do here.
Right, so what are you doing today for the high school students in Southampton? What are they doing today? I would like to know, please.
That question I'll defer to the superintendents, but I just do want to share some things with you. We had a couple youth forums. Before I get to the youth forums, let me share some data with you. Okay. This was done amongst 8th, 10th, and 12th graders. Almost 90%, 88% felt anxious or stressed in the past month. 10% considered suicide. 43% experienced depression or symptoms of it in the past year. I'm studying to get to be a CASE, credentialed alcohol substance abuse counselor. I can tell you that a majority of people with substance use disorders also have mental health disorders. So this is alarming, but I'll tell you what these kids said, excuse me. There's not a lot to do in the Hamptons. And so, especially in the winter. So what these kids tell us, what will prevent drug use is they need creative outlets. They want intramural sports, dance clubs, something that involves no phones, photography clubs, yoga. This is what the kids
So let me
want, and
just
we heard
interject
them.
for 1 second, because when my son was in 8th grade at the middle school, every month or every other month, they offered a dance. In this high school, there's been one dance in the year, and it was the Friday before the President's Day week when everybody was away. So why does this school not offer something on Fridays and Saturdays for the kids to have an outlet to go to?
I'll have to defer to Dr. John or the principal on that.
okay.
But
We have
heard the
two
kids on
school
this.
superintendents who are present from the task force, so I don't know if either Hampton Bays or Southampton. Nick, did you want to say anything on this in terms of the Southampton School District?
I want to say something. So I'm a high school student, and I agree with you that the schools aren't doing enough. You know, I brought the hotline poster into my school. They hung up one, you know, like where no one sees it, where no one passes by. You know,
So how
but
can we
also
see what
we
she's
can't
saying?
It's not all in the hands of the schools. You know, it's
Yeah.
like the kids aren't listening to their teachers or their principals anymore. It's when it comes down to it, we can't keep attaching to this idea that we're going to fix everyone's problems. We need to just love each other.
But this is prevention,
and-
right? So you have this huge task force, and here's this girl who's 16 who's trying to make a difference, and she's not getting any help with the school. But a huge task force, almost more people in the task force than in the audience, and you guys are dealing with the people who are already addicted to heroin, but yet where's the prevention? There's none.
It has to do with the parents too. It's what are the parents doing? You know, what are the families
Right.
doing? Where are the friends? Where are the support? Where is
Do you know that for this?
There's
yeah.
support lacking, okay? In schools, in families, and it's a group effort. It's not just going to be, oh, Southampton School is going to fix this. No, it's everyone needs to come together, and we can't place blame on one.
I'm not placing blame, but I know for this forum tonight, my husband saw it at work. I did not know anything about it. I go to the library all the time in Southampton. I'm in the grocery store. I did not see one pamphlet on this task force tonight. My husband saw it at the hospital. Now, most people going to the hospital are not looking to go to an opioid task force. I mean, they're very busy. So where was the flyers everywhere? It wasn't listed in school. It wasn't in the library. It wasn't in the grocery stores. So here we're trying to get a task force, but there's no one here.
Well, maybe you want to volunteer and help us promote the next one. But we did quite a bit of outreach. It was advertised in the newspapers. There was a number of radio spots, both English and Spanish language. We did a lot of social media outreach, and we're doing our best. And, you know, we do have a big task force. There was, I'd say, 100 or so people in the audience, and that's great. Obviously, it's a big room. We'd love to see it filled and have the entire community responding to this crisis. But, you know, if we get one person and that one person makes a difference in saving somebody's life, I think that is worth our efforts. But, you know, I appreciate what you're saying. I wanted to give the school, Southampton, at least a chance to respond to what the school is doing, and then I want to move on to the next speaker. But thank you, Sarah. Nick?
Sure, thank you. We are listening to students, and as our young member of the task force said, and as Father said, there have been two various youth forums that we're listening to, and we're getting the voices of our young people heard. We don't do school-wide assemblies often enough, but we have a lot of mandates that we do have to do. We try to integrate education into any class when it's appropriate and authentic. Can we do more? Absolutely. Are we going to learn to listen to do more? Absolutely.
Great. I just actually had the other statement that I just wanted to make, and I just want to throw it out more for the...
Okay, last thing, Sarah, because we have a number of people still waiting to speak.
Okay.
So.
I have a lot of patients who are addicted and they have issues, and they said at any time in Southampton, they can go to the gas station and get drugs. Anytime. That's where they get their drugs. And I've never seen a police car at the gas station, so I just wanted to throw it out there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on to this.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Chimento. I'm from Community Action for Social Justice. So I've been hearing a lot of education, prevention, and enforcement, but there's a big piece that is missing in this task force, and that's harm reduction. So we're working with an opioid epidemic. So that means there's a tremendous amount of people that are currently addicted. Yes, we want them into treatment. Yes, we want them to get better. But what do we do with them in the meantime? Harm reduction. They need sterile supplies, because if a person who is now ready for treatment finds out they have HIV or hepatitis C, that could totally put a person back, relapse, and even worse, into their addiction. So it's really important for people to be educated about harm reduction. Community Action for Social Justice is the only syringe exchange program on Long Island. We're free, we're anonymous, we go to our participants, they do not have to come to us. We will meet them in their homes, we will meet them in a public location if they're uncomfortable with that. We provide Narcan training to families, to participants. We have a tremendous amount of reversals from active drug users. Last year alone, we had 98 saves with Narcan. 96 of those were from active drug users. So these are people saving their friends' lives. And it's not because they're pushing the threshold using because they know Narcan is present. If you talk to any of my participants, they will tell you straight out, they don't want to have Narcan used on them. It puts them in a really uncomfortable withdrawal. So to voluntarily Narcan on yourself is just not what's going to happen, because I know that's always a concern of people giving it to active drug users. But yeah, I mean, prevention's great, education's amazing, enforcement, it's something we have to do, but harm reduction is really important and it needs to be addressed as well.
Does your organization have a pamphlet of resources, contact information?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been trying to get on the community solutions list, but I've been told since we're not an OASIS provider, we can't go on there. So, I mean, I go to the meetings monthly. But we have a Facebook page, Community Action for Social Justice. I have cards I could hand out. I have palm cards that I could bring and distribute to whomever needs them. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
I'm Jim Moore, and I've got a 21-year-old boy and a 14-year-old, and I'm trying to find something to take home, like Mackenzie said, as a parent to prevent it. And Mr. Venza said, you know, keep them off marijuana, have a third caring adult. And I don't want to put, and I don't know if I'm saying your name right, Ms. Gillies or Mr. Scott on the spot, but you've been through this, and a lot of people have. But are there two things you could give us to do as a parent at home to prevent what happened to you? Just two things to do as a parent, because those two were helpful to me, something concrete.
It's a great question. So, Sally, do you want to try it?
It is a great question, and I feel like my family, if anybody had a chance, Hallie did, and we did everything.
Sally, I'm having trouble hearing you, so I suspect other people are as well.
Not working.
Is that mic on?
There's nothing you can do but just show love, and like Mackenzie said, you know, just keep them involved. And I reached out to their friends that they cared about most. Like I said, if anybody had a chance, Hallie did. So it is very, very difficult, and I don't really have a straightforward
No, I don't want to
answer
put
for
you on the spot. I'm looking for a couple little tips. Thank you.
I'll give you some tips. I'll give you tips. Right here.
I can't see who's talking.
Me.
Oh, Mr. Bender.
Mark Epley right here.
Oh, okay. I'll sit down and let you.
No. It's, I'll give you tips. The tips are talk to your kids. Be involved. Be present. Evaluate what you're doing. Because if you're going out and partying, guess what they're going to do? And then sometimes you can do all that stuff, and you have things that happen. But I'm going to give a quick story. I coached and went to a Christmas party, and a person I coached with, his son had a problem. And as I was talking to the mother said to me in the middle of it, "Oh my God, I think I need to hide my stash." And I said, "That's your problem. When I know when your kid has a problem, that's it." So talk to your kids, be present in their life, get involved, ask questions. You can do all of that stuff, and hopefully you have a fighting chance there. Yeah.
You know, I appreciate you giving me feedback on a couple hard strategies. And as we all know, there's no cause and effect and magic wand here. So I'd like to give one more from personal experience. This has nothing to do with my licensures or my years in the field. This was personal experience. How many of you are out there have children, nieces, nephews that have part-time jobs, students, jobs, right? Most of you, fast food, retail. My son was a half a mile from the house, saving money for his first car as a senior in high school. We know 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, they're pretty impressionable, especially to, want to fit in and be accepted by older folks. The 35-year-old manager at the fast food restaurant, married with children, was also a heroin addict. He turned on my son, another young lady, and another boy, 3 kids from the same high school. Perception of danger remains low. Risk of use goes up. Once we got rid of the needle and you could sniff heroin, that changed a whole generation of young people using. So by sniffing, you weren't that real addict anymore. Years ago, you weren't sniffing and getting high because the purity levels weren't that high. So now a line of coke, a bump of dope, it fell from the top shelf to this social, recreational, acceptable drug in the young person's eyes, unfortunately. So they made a bad decision. This guy exposed them to it. My question is, how well do you know the managers in the fast food restaurants or the stores where your young people are working? Have you vetted them out? Have you met them? That's a hard strategy right there, because all of our young kids, what do? We coach them to get jobs, to get life experience, to get work. Unfortunately, nobody's vetting out these people who are interfacing with our young people. He was a half a mile from the house. We thought he was safe. That's the last place we thought. So I hope that's one hard strategy, hopefully, to put under your, and I appreciate your question. It was great. Hopefully that helps. Thank you.
All right, let's switch to the right side here.
So I'm currently a student in East Hampton High School. I'm 16, and what I've seen going on, every single organization or coalition, as you guys said, I haven't heard any of them in East Hampton at all. And how people are saying how students making a change because of Parkland and that you guys want us to do something because of the drugs. There are students who don't care. There are students who are addicts and they don't make steam of it. My question is, what are you guys doing? Because I've seen kids smoking in the bathroom. They have been, let's say, doing cocaine in the bathroom, doing whatever they want in the bathroom. Teachers don't seem a chance because there's a door blocking it for privacy. Because of that privacy, students are taking advantage of it. Students who get caught of smoking in the bathrooms, they have only a week of suspension and they come back and do the same exact thing. What are you guys doing about it?
You're what, East Hampton, you said?
Mm-hmm.
So, and certainly we're all part of the East End community. Southampton town folks are more represented here than East Hampton. We'd love to see East Hampton School involved with our task force if they go their own way. Is there, that's okay too, but is there anybody from the task force who has any information? Lars, who is the superintendent of Hampton Bays School District, can respond a little bit.
So I imagine that's very frustrating, right? When you're in the classroom and you see you're doing the right thing, which is often hard to do, to make the right choice in high school, and you see someone who doesn't, and 5 days later they come back. One of the elements of, sort of like our police chief, Skrzynecki said, and Mr. Sini said, is that punishment is not going, we're not going to punish our way out of this out of this problem. And I'm looking at my school counselor here in the audience, because not only is suspension a critical piece, but the help that we give to kids is a critical piece. And that's not something you might see in school or in the classroom or in the hallway. But if a student is found or caught, and sometimes we don't catch everything, right? It happens in the bathroom, and we might not catch it today, but we'll catch it the next time, or we'll be keyed in on it. And there's a suspension piece, but then there's also that social, emotional, counseling, support, mental health piece. And if we can't offer it in school, we work with Southampton Hospital and Stony Brook Hospital and all of our counseling partners to help get those kids help. That's not super public, but it's a very big component of that.
Because only when I was taking health this year, it's only one semester for health, and that's one problem. Because in that class, There was only, probably out of all 12 of us, only 4 of us actually really paying attention. And the only programs I saw come in as guest speakers was Hugs and
We love hugs, yeah.
and the retreat program here,
We love that too.
and that's it. And the rest of the programs really made a change of it, and we want to see more.
Dr. Dunn said one of the important pieces is to make sure that it doesn't just have one unit in health class or one assembly. Look at the auditorium. How many kids would be listening if we only did things like this? The best approach for an educator is to make sure that we are doing every day in every setting, that it's not just a health unit, but we're talking about it in advisory classes and in homeroom and in English and in all the subjects, so that they're getting it in a lot of different ways, not just when we have famous guest speakers.
Thank you, Lars. Sorry about the technical difficulties we're having with some of the microphones. All right, we'll go to this side, and whoever is next here.
Hi. So we're both students, and we are with the Youth Advisory Committee for Southampton Town.
Yeah, can you lower that mic, maybe, Sage?
Okay.
Great, and speak right into the mic there.
We're both students for the, and we work with the Youth Advisory Committee for Southampton Town, and we also went to both of the youth forums held. So when we attended those forums,
You're going to have to go right up to the
attended
microphone,
those
like an
forums.
ice cream cone almost. Yeah.
when we attended the forums, we discussed education, awareness, mental health, and the need for more outlets in our community. And we put together like lists, and we figured out the main topics and the most important things that really help.
Just a little closer to that microphone, and we'll be able to hear you.
And we put together a list that all around helps kids. It's not just one thing, it's more combined like tasks and like stuff like that. So one of the main topics we discussed was mental health, and like a lot of other people said tonight, we need to focus on treatment rather than punishment. So like educators and parents and guardians usually, if they notice behavioral differences in kids, they resort to like punishing them and like all that. So I feel like if we focus more on like realizing what the problem is, then it could potentially save a lot of people from getting into bad decisions. And then for the education, we said hold interdisciplinary team conventions, which is when everybody that is involved in the student's life throughout the day, like coaches, teachers, anybody, like parents, they can go too. They can all get together and discuss any of the behavioral differences that they've noticed and figure out how to change them and how to reverse them. And like, yeah. And another thing that was mentioned is we need more outlets, like recreational facilities, clubs, etc. We have like SYS and the Youth Advisory Committee, which I'm on, which has actually helped me and a lot of people that I know, like get away and have like other like things to do on Friday nights, like open mic nights and volunteering and helping with drug take back day and stuff. And if we have more clubs and activities for people with all different interests, then more kids will be willing to go to them, and yeah. We said that hands-on workshops should be required in schools rather than textbook readings, and a certain amount of days should be designated to out-of-class discussion about kids' feelings, performance, and goals. This could lead to the indication that something is wrong. It could prevent them from resorting to opiates. Yeah,
Can you guys maybe leave your comments too, so we have a record of them? So, you know, but I was having a little trouble hearing everything, but it sounded like more activities and treatment, mental health type of stuff, and engagement, things for kids, younger people to do, activities. And that's very much what the youth forum was saying as well, that, you know, kids are bored, they want to, You know, when they're bored, that's when they stray, and if there were more positive, constructive things to do, it could help combat the epidemic. So thank you. If you want to submit them to the task force, that would be great. All right, thank you. Did anybody want to respond else to that? All right, let's go to this side.
Hi, my name is Andrea, and I'm an 11th grader in East Hampton High School. And
You speak loud and right into the microphone.
so the problem is that there's way too many drugs and alcohol, obviously, but it's the places where they get it from. I know so many places where you can get it from because I have family that experiments with them. I have neighbors that experiment with them. It's all over the place. In the trailer parks where I used to live, they would sell it around the corner. Behind the IGA, they would sell it there. Like near the daycare, near the park, it's everywhere. Nobody's going to stop drugs. No prevention, no seminars, no assemblies. That is not going to work.
Oh, there you go.
All right. Like the lady said, we want people that look like us because we can relate more to them, and no one's going to stop doing them until we see the actual brutal results. I know kids that sell marijuana behind Stop and Shop. These programs sound great that you guys mentioned, but we don't see them in our schools. They happen once a year, I guess. None of those programs have ever reached out to my school especially. Hugs was my savior. It helped me, progress with the problems that we were having at home in my neighborhood. I have a cousin that was found face down in the lawn, and he was experimenting with alcohol and drugs.
I'm sorry.
And they were selling those stuff everywhere. He's okay now, but it doesn't stop there. There's so many people. So many of my friends are still doing it, and they won't stop. We want more programs, so this can all stop. I know it's not, and it's gonna be really hard, but we want programs that are easy to go to and that are free, and we just want our answers to be answered. So, yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you for sharing. We're aware of the HUGS program. We're really glad that it was helpful for you. And Kim Lalby from that program has been working with this task force and the youth forums. And in terms of the availability of drugs, it's really sad to hear how accessible drugs are to kids. And obviously that's something that we're working with law enforcement on, reducing the availability. It's frustrating, but I know it's not easy to come up in front of a crowd and share a story like that, so I really appreciate you taking the time and having the courage to do that.
We want these programs, but they're expensive, and we want them for free because of financial issues. How can we do that?
All right, so I'm having a little trouble hearing, but in terms of the treatment is expensive, is that what you're saying? And how do we get more money for that?
What she's trying to say is that there are so many retreats out here, but they're over $300, and some of us can't afford it. The schools may give us scholarships, but they only give us one-time scholarships. But, for example, HUGS, they give you a scholarship if you can't financially accept it, or some schools may give you a scholarship, or you just have to pay for all of it. It's not way too expensive, but we need more programs like that out here, or we need programs that are free. Like they said, we need like something to entertain us, so some people won't be go doing experiments, go do this, go do that. So we need to come in as like all students into one community and try to survive, because supposedly we're the bad generation because we're the ones teaching the little ones into drugs. Because I know middle schoolers who are getting suspended because of vaping or juuling or bringing in marijuana into school and stuffing it in the locker thinking that no one's going to find it.
All right, is anybody who wants to respond? So part of that was that you want programs to be more affordable, right? Right? Did I hear that part right? Mm-hmm. Nancy, did you want to respond to that? Nancy Lynett is the town's youth program director.
Hi. You're absolutely right that programs are not accessible. It's difficult to afford them. And the other big problem that we face here is transportation. If there is a program, getting there can often be a problem. Do you see that too?
Yes. Yes.
Yes? Yeah, so those are definitely two things that we need to address as we, move forward with everybody working together. Hopefully we can find ways to offset some of these costs.
So we have to move on a little bit. We're already 25 minutes past our 9 o'clock end time, and so if we could not add any more to the lines, because we're going to have other opportunities for people to speak, but we'll take the last 5 or so speakers that are there. But thank you so much for coming forward. And if we could do this as briefly as possible, I know some of our panel members and task force have child care obligations and things that need to get home. So
Hi.
Go ahead.
Hi, good evening. A quick story. I was at Smith Haven Mall and with my family, and as we were leaving, someone had approached me and asked me if I knew where they could find that long-lasting battery. And so because I was with my family and I knew that right across was the Sprint store, I knew what he was saying. And he was asking me if I had drugs. With that being said, my name is Kim Jones, and I work for Alternatives Counseling Services. And one of the things that we do is that we try to educate parents and community members that if you happen to pass by a note on your son or daughter's floor and it says something weird, we can try to explain to you the terminology of it. Southampton School has been very gracious and very good to us. We have been going into Southampton School for the past over 10 years, doing Too Good for Violence and Too Good for Drugs. This is now our second year of doing Teen Intervene. We have someone that comes into the high school, and they are able to identify the early onset of substance abuse. The program has been doing very well. We've gotten really great feedback from the community, the parents, and the school district, and we appreciate that support. As far as, yes, a lot of the people that we see, we are also an outpatient treatment agency as well as prevention. I am a prevention specialist. I am also a CASAC in training and a peer recovery coach. When I was growing up, we didn't have a lot of outlets, but we had the drive-in, we had the roller skating rink, and for us, that was the spot. A lot of these kids now, or people that come in, have dual diagnoses, which means it stems from some type of mental health. And if we cannot provide, if they do not have the basic needs to provide for themselves, then they start to self-medicate, and then it just trickles down from there. But yes, programs do need to be funded. And my last question is, how do prevention agencies like ourselves apply for that forfeiture money?
So the final question was, how do prevention agencies like yours apply for asset forfeiture money?
Yes.
Unfortunately, the district attorney had to go to handle an emerging situation. So, we do have a representative. Do you want to take this, Brad, from the district attorney's office? Or I don't know the procedure for obtaining asset forfeiture money. Or Chief, do you want to? Okay.
Asset forfeiture money is very strictly regulated by the federal government, and it can only go to law enforcement agencies who can use it with agencies like yours. So it's not a question of how you can apply for it, but it's a question more of involving yourself with law enforcement agencies that might have an interest in spending that money on your program. So I would recommend that you contact the local police or the district attorney's office and advertise what you can offer, and then it's a matter of them wanting to use that money to purchase your services, which is a very good possibility. Okay?
Thank you.
Yes, great program.
All right, let's switch to this side.
Hi, my name is Patty Brushy, and I want to thank everybody for being here. As somebody had mentioned, this has grown into quite the committee. I loved what Pam shared as far as the early prevention. HUG has been mentioned several times this evening with Kim's program, Catching It Early. My heart goes out to the people that have lost family members. It changes everything. It brings people forward, it starts communication, and it takes a village. As a single mom, it was not just me raising my kids, it was the community raising my kids. We were all down at the beach, but everybody had eyes out on each other's kids. If I didn't know where my son or my daughter was, somebody else knew. But I was involved. I was parents hands-on. And even saying that, this disease does not discriminate. It doesn't matter where you come from. But like the gentleman had said from Outreach, who are your children with? That's what you got to start looking at. Who's your next door neighbor? Because that next door neighbor isn't what my next door neighbor used to be. I used to be able to tell the crazy people when we were growing up, like, that dude's crazy, stay away from him. You don't know who the sick people are anymore. And they manipulate the kids, and they bring them in because they're not getting what they need at home. They're not being, the kids are raising themselves, let's face it. Parents aren't home anymore. In Hampton Bays, 2 years ago, now this has nothing to do with drugs, but it's what Pam had said as far as being a positive example. Movie theater, you've got 25 to 30 men up there, eyeballing, making comments, up there all day, loitering. When that community was built, the movie theater, there was a sign, no loitering. When the kids were up there, when that was built, doing their skateboarding, they were kicked away from there. Why is that going on? There was a man up there drunk, public display drunk, no shirt on, acting cray-cray. Kids are going up there. I called the cops. I said, I'm going to stay and see what happens. Make sure that this guy is getting taken away. Cops come. The guy has a container. He's drinking. The cop talks to him, doesn't even get out of the car. I turn the corner thinking, okay, they got him in the car. They're taking him away from the property. I turn to come out of the parking lot, and the guy's coming from the back of the building, still drinking. The cop is there still. I pulled up to the cop and I said, I'm the woman that called. Why isn't that man being arrested? My hands are tied. I understand it's difficult these days because everybody's got rights. But when our kids watch that, and I call as a concerned citizen, that this man is looking crazy, acting crazy, and nothing's being done, what does that say to our kids? Do what you want? It doesn't matter? Hampton Bays, the liquor store, there was a sign up there, and it said on a chalkboard, if you can't be happy, at least you can get drunk. I'm like, what kind of sign is that? So I go inside and I ask if I could talk to the owner, because that's not what I want my kid or my grandchild to see. So it is a community effort. I thank you. I thank everybody for being here. And I hope to God that people are watching this at home, because there really are not enough people at this forum right now. But I thank everybody for doing what they can do, and hopefully, little bit by little bit, we just keep on moving. Thank you.
So I just wanted to say, too, this is our second, I'm sorry to interrupt the applause there. This is our second forum. There's one in Hampton Bays, had like 250 people. I think there was maybe 100 here tonight. We're outreaching in so many ways. Drew and I were on the radio, I think, just the other day in the morning. We're trying to reach out in every way we can. We do have as you said, it takes a community, it takes a village. We do have a different type of event coming up on May 12th. It's the Saturday before Mother's Day, and it is in Hampton Bays. And it's not going to be a forum like this. It's going to be a candlelight vigil to remember all the people who've lost their lives. And we hope that friends and family members and anyone who's been touched by this epidemic, affected by this epidemic, comes out, shares pictures, shares stories, readings, poems. We have some
and that is needed
musical
very
entertainment.
much to honor those people that are passed on, to let them know that they are forever remembered.
Right.
But what I'm saying is that, like these girls right before me said, the streets need to be cleaned up. Like,
No, I
it
think
is
that's
out
important,
there,
too.
and I think that you're putting forth a new change, because it starts with dialogue. And that's what I see happening here, so I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. My only point is that in that other venue in Good Ground Park, in a more intimate setting, maybe it'll draw other people to an event like that, and we'll be able to reach more people. Not everybody may feel comfortable in a forum like this, coming forth and being part of it. And I agree with what you said about the community and all those things. So we'll go over here.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Leo. I'm a resident of this community for about 30 years. Mother, I'm also a therapist, and I work in this field for almost 30 years. I'm a clinical director of a program in East Hampton, the Dunes. And I first just want to say, I almost didn't get up, but I just couldn't help myself. So I just wanted to say how moving it is to me that there's a group of people in this community doing this work. And I'm especially moved by Mackenzie's family for their loss, and for this gentleman up here for his loss, and all the work you do in the same field that I do, and then to lose your son. It's really heartbreaking. And the reason why I wanted to stand up is because it was actually you, Mackenzie. I was listening to you talk about love, and this woman that went before me started to speak about it too, and I'm thinking, in my work, what I know when people come to a therapist or when people come into treatment, I'm thinking, why does anybody use drugs, really? Why do anybody use them? I mean, maybe because it feels good, but really, people are trying to get out of themselves. They're trying not to feel the way they feel. They want to feel something different. And when you think about people that are young, already wanting to feel like they need to get out of themselves. I mean, grown-ups do it when they have their wine, and, for a lot of people, they can have a glass of wine and it's fine. But we still do live in a culture that is teaching us to get out of ourselves. And Mackenzie, you made me think, what is it that is that existential feeling of feeling of unrest and wanting to get out? And it has to do with feeling connected, not feeling connected. And this idea of community and connection and love is really what I know it comes down to. So when people come together like this, it is the beginning of something. And I was thinking, I heard people talking about the churches, and there was one gentleman from the fire department who was clearly upset, and he was talking about the churches that he's involved with, and I'm thinking, that's what we need to do. Like, everybody here should now, I'm hoping, go home and talk to people around them in their communities and go to their churches and get all the people in our community here. And yes, it is a drug problem, but there's an underlying problem. I'm thinking about the law enforcement people. You guys are going to be doing this forever. Whether the drugs are legal or illegal, people are going to use them. So we want to get to the point of why people are looking for this alternative, right? So that's why I had to stand up. I wanted to thank you, and I also wanted to encourage you, all of you, everyone here, to go home and keep going with this. Bring more people, bring all the communities together. And it does have to do with love and supporting each other. So, thanks.
Thank you. All right. Sir?
Hello, Southampton. My name is Zach. I'm 26 years old, born and raised in East Hampton, and I'm a drug addict and alcoholic. I'm just shy of 2 years clean and sober, and thank you. And like others were just saying, I think the most important thing is support. I wouldn't have been able to be where I'm at today without the support I've gotten from first going to treatment, Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholics Anonymous and 12-Step Fellowship. It saved my life. And I think more importantly, for prevention, I mean, I wish I had an answer to that, but I could tell you that, when you go to treatment, if you have the insurance, you get your 28 days, then what? For me, I was lucky enough to get into a sober house, recovery home, and it was the best decision I ever made in my life. And unfortunately, there isn't any in East Hampton, there isn't any in Montauk, Amagansett, and I know when people think of a bunch of addicts living together, I get it. I know what people think, but without that support, I wouldn't be clean today. I think that having more, availability to things like that, or something along that line could really help out. I mean, when I went to treatment for my first time when I was 20 years old, I went back to, they say to stay away from people, places, and things. That's what they teach you in rehab. I went back home because I had nowhere else to go. I was using and drinking within a month because I had nowhere else to go. And I mean, I just believe that, the support that I have and everything that I've gained now is because of that, and because of, what I've learned and the suggestions I've taken, in NA and living in the sober house, and a bunch of, if 6 people all doing the same thing together, you're going to have a lot better of an outcome than you trying to do it on your own. I used drugs because I didn't want to feel, because I didn't want to be alone. That's why you use drugs, because you don't want to feel. And I mean, now I think maybe if there's more people in the community, or more sober houses, recovery houses, whatever you want to call it, out on the East End. I mean, I know there's a bunch in Riverhead, I know Mastic, I know, but I mean, me growing up in East Hampton and out here, there's none in Southampton, there's none in East Hampton, there's none in Amagansett, Montauk. I think, having more people do well and people staying clean and showing other young people that this is possible, might look good, might get some kids to be like, you know what, Zach can stay clean, this person can stay clean, maybe I can too. And that's kind of what happened to me. So, and for the schools, I mean, I'm sure you could ask some young people in the area to come speak at the school. I'm sure they'd be willing to help out. So that's kind of all I got, so thank you.
No, thank you, Zach. Anyone from the task force who wants to respond at all on the issue of sober homes?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name's Paul. You're right, Zach. Something that my co-partner and I are working on is we know that Riverhead has a real strong, amazingly strong recovery community, and it's due to sober housing. Shirley also, there's some good meetings up there, and it's due to the sober housing that's around there that most sober houses people are not, I don't want to say mandated, but are asked to go to an AA or an NA meeting at least a couple times a week, and what that causes is a strong community. When 2 people, 4 people, 6 people, 10 people get together and they're doing the same thing, like you were saying, staying clean together, it makes for a strong community. And what we're trying to do with Stepping Stones is bring that here. We're trying to bring that to Southampton, to Hampton Bays. We're trying to recreate what has been done so successfully in Riverhead and Shirley, So we're trying, and we're trying to do that fight. We're trying to get through that stigma of once an addict, always an addict, So Stepping Stones is trying to do that. Okay.
All right, thank you, Paul. All right, and the last speaker?
I promise I'll be quick. I just wanted to speak briefly on the education of the 911 Good Samaritan law, that we're not getting the message out enough. That this law was designed to encourage people to call and to seek medical attention for themselves or a friend who might be experiencing an overdose. However, it is only effective if it's being done and people are aware of its existence. A recent Twitter poll concluded that 53% of all surveyed never even heard of the Good Samaritan laws. A polling taken at the conclusion of an NA meeting where 23 attendees were asked if they knew of the 911 Good Samaritan drug immunity laws, and only one hand went up. 911 Good Samaritan laws are completely useless if no one knows about them. There should be a billboard outside of hospitals, every police department lobby, every public gathering place that has a CPR poster should have a poster stating the law and how it works. There should be public service announcements, social media advertising, and feature articles should run in local newspapers, shining a light on a powerful tool that can help save a life. There are countless people who have been given another chance at life because someone called for them. Back in 1999, Texas was the first state to enact the safe haven law that allows a parent to leave their unharmed baby at a fire station or a hospital. By 2008, all 50 states had adopted this law. Like the 911 Good Samaritan law, the safe haven law was created to encourage people to save a life rather than to throw it away. Unlike the 911 Good Samaritan law, the safe haven law receives so much publicity that it is now a common knowledge law. As a result, countless lives have been saved. We can do better. Every Narcan kit should come included with either a placard inside or printed on the outside. Like we have directions, it should have it on the back and tell everybody what the 911 Good Samaritan law is and how you are protected by using it.
All right, I think thank you. And thank you for bringing up the Good Samaritan law. I agree that it's extremely important. Let me allow the police chief to respond to that.
Just very quickly, you are 100% right. People should be more aware of that. And whenever I'm in a public place, I try to make sure that people understand that. And I can tell you that within the last 2 weeks, actually, we had a situation where there was an overdose and somebody called, and there were 51 bags of heroin in that location. Nobody got arrested. The individual got Narcan. The individual was saved. Of course, we confiscated the drugs that were there, but the Good Samaritan law was applied and will always be applied. We believe in it, and we know it has benefits. So I appreciate you bringing that to everyone's attention and try to echo your message that if somebody knows of somebody who is using and is about to overdose or is overdosing, please do not be afraid to call 911. We will come, we will service that person, we'll rescue that person, and no one will get arrested. Thank you.
So let me close real quickly. First, by reminding everybody once again that we have a community vigil coming up on May 12th. That's Saturday, Good Ground Park. I think it's 7 o'clock in the evening. If you feel like there wasn't enough people here tonight, help get the message out for that community vigil. If you think you know people who might be interested, if you know somebody who's been affected by this crisis, have them come, and then we'll have more people there. And I want to once again thank Southampton High School, in particular Nick Dino, for hosting us, and the board here, the Board of Education. I want to thank Connie Conway, who helped put this forum together today. Of course, my co-chair, Drew Scott, who's been very active on this issue, who is personally affected and decided to make it his life's mission to prevent somebody else from going through the pain that he went through. And of course, all of our speakers tonight who spoke earlier in the evening, and all those who came and shared their comments and questions, and all of the task force members. We have a lot of work still ahead of us, but progress sometimes is slow. But I think we understand it takes a community coming together and developing these solutions. And so far, we have at least a little bit of positive news with, although one is too many, to go from 7 to 1 is at least a positive sign in terms of fatalities in the first quarter. So let's hope there's no more, and we'll see you at the next event on May 12th. Thank you.